This episode is sponsored by AireCon, one of the UK's finest analogue gaming festivals, taking place at the Harrogate Convention Centre between the 13th to the 15th of March next year. Tickets are on sale now. Check out the website, which is aircon.uk, or check out our links in the show notes for more information. Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for September. You know, I would kind of say, oh, well, you know, the year's just going on and passing and where is it all gone? And, you know, but sometimes you want to keep a record of what's going on in your life. Sometimes you even maybe want to have a blog. And sometimes it's even worthwhile, if you're a gamer or if you're into your tabletop, it's worthwhile kind of having a blog. Sometimes it's actually worthwhile just going straight out there and saying that you've got a Tabletop Games blog. So joining me from Tabletop Games blog, I've got Oliver Kinne. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello.
And you got my name right, which is perfect.
That's because I asked you before we started recording, so don't act surprised. It's like...
Don't tell anyone.
It's like...
I was going to give you that one.
If there's anything if there's anything that's going to embarrass me more, it's getting a name wrong. I mean, you know, I've managed...
But you didn't ever get them wrong, so
I've managed it so far on my own show. I can't talk or comment about any other shows, but it's like, you know, I'm doing okay, I think, potentially.
Yeah, I think you're good. Yeah.
And if I get it wrong, at least I've got the ability to edit out any mistakes that might happen. So, you know, maybe looking back, I can rewind the clock back and kind of take everything out again. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate that.
You're kind of, you're very prolific. You're kind of like...
as much as you, though. Come on.
I don't know. I think we need to have a who does more stuff and releases more content, because it seems to be on a regular basis and every single day that you've got something kind of out there. So, but we're going to talk about this. We're going to work through this together and find out, you know, who does create more content, I reckon, is you. But first of all, we should say hello to everybody who's listening. Hello, everybody who's listening.
Hello.
You know, if you're listening for the first time.
Hello, everyone.
The reason that we do this is because there's quite simply, there's not enough podcasts out there about board gaming and tabletop. I've checked. It's impossible to check in iTunes now. They've completely messed up. They've completely destroyed it. You know, there's us. There's some kind of thing called Tabletop Inquisition, which I guess we'll have to talk about at some point. There's the Scottish contingency. We've got Giant Brain. We've got Unlucky Frog, and then we've got those other idiots, the sporadically bored ones, which we're going to mention because they are idiots and they are sporadic. So there you go. And
I don't listen to those.
They've caused me a great amount of pain recently, so I've got issues. I'm like a boy that's drunk a bottle of vinegar and then asked for more vinegar, so I could be even more vinegary and bitter than I usually am. And the other reason that we do this is because I feel like Emperor Palpatine at the end of the Phantom Menace, where I'm your kind of Anakin Skywalker, and I'm walking up to you and I'm like, kind of going, we shall watch your career with great interest, because I
thought you were more like Obi-Wan Kenobi, actually.
No, I'm definitely not the good guy.
Okay.
But I'm kind of interested to find out a little bit more, because I'm not joking when I say you're consistent. You seem to have come from nowhere and you're just consistently putting out little bits of content kind of here, there and everywhere, whether it's been like kind of snatches of kind of audio in terms of your reviews or thought pieces or full podcasts that you're doing as well. I want to kind of I guess rewind the way back kind of clock.
The way back machine. Yeah.
Back to when you were a kinder instead of just a kinner. And
very good. See, school was good for something. I
didn't have German at school, but I know there's something called Kinder eggs, and I guess they made children's eggs. So there you go. So that was just a wild stab in the dark, which I feel I'm probably due a wild stab in the dark pretty soon. Kind of growing up, were you a sit around the table type kind of family? I mean, were you the kind of traditional kind of Monopoly people and stuff like that?
Well, not just Monopoly. I mean, Germany is famous for games, I think, generally. But when I grew up, card games were the big thing. You know, my parents would play card games. My older brother would play with them. You know, we have games like Skat and Doppelkopf and Schafskopf and lots of other German names that are really lovely to pronounce. So they would play that. And obviously, to me as a child, that was all a bit complicated. But we did play Monopoly. But my brother also bought some other games, so we had sort of other roll and move games like Winnetou, which sort of like cowboys and Indians, and you're moving through, you know, based on tales by a famous German author called Karl May, who was doing sort of, you know, those sort of cowboy stories. Yeah. And then later, sort of, I don't know what it's called in German. It's like a stock market game called Die Börse, where you're basically buying shares, selling shares, affecting the stock market, and I think some sort of event cards and things. And then my brother always enjoyed actually making mashup of games as well. So we would say, I don't know, take the money from Monopoly and maybe some cards from there and add it to another game. And, you know, as you take one turn, you can take it and, you know, turn another game, things like that. So you create real smash ups of all the games we had, and you eventually even create his own game. So gaming has always been around in my childhood. And I think, like a lot of people, you sort of then, you know, get a bit older and you're not so much interested in playing games, maybe video games. So I've got into computers in my sort of early teens, I'd say. And the sort of that went by the wayside and was more computer games.
Did you grow up in Germany then, or did you grow up in the UK?
Yes. No, I'm born and bred Berliner. So I was there when the wall came down. I was going to ask that. So that was quite exciting. Yeah. So it was very interesting times to be in West Berlin as well. So, you know, I grew up with the wall always around, never expecting it to, you know, disappear. It was sort of, you know, something you just accept was there, and that's how it was.
Were you in East Germany then when you grew up?
No, West Germany.
You were in West Germany, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was literally in that half of Berlin, the West Berlin, which was surrounded by the East German wall. So we were living on an island, and probably have a sort of similar island sense of humor like the British have. So as I say, I grew up with the wall being around us, and never expecting it to come down. And then, well, as we all know, it did eventually come down, and it was, quite weird. We were going to school and I heard the news. Obviously, it was like a few weeks before it actually came down that, you know, there were demonstrations, peaceful demonstrations in East Germany and all that sort of stuff. And you didn't know whether Russia would send, or rather Soviet Union at the time would send in the tanks again, which obviously didn't happen. And then when eventually the wall was opened, we went to school and were saying to our teachers, look, we need to basically go and see this. We're happy to write an essay, whatever you want us to do. And they actually you know, had a discussion and came back to us and said, well, we can't let you go because your parents don't know. And we're about, what was it, 89, so I was about 16 then.
Okay.
And we just decided to go. We basically said, no, sorry, we have to see this. This is like, you know, big world event. We can't stay in school for the day. And yeah, we all went out, split up, went to different places in West Berlin, sort of various border crossings and other places. And we'd speak to the East Germans who'd come over with their passport, and there were long queues in front of the banks, which were offering, like welcome money out of things like 50 Deutschmarks at the time or something, small amount. And it was amazing to be part of that history.
Was it a bit of a culture shock for the people coming over from the east side? Because I'm guessing they were fairly kind of, they were fairly obviously from a pretty repressed kind of regime at the time. So did you make friends? Did you start to get kids kind of integrated into kind of like the schools? Did you start to get to know a few kind of East German people and things like that?
No, I mean, as kids, it didn't really change much because people still lived where they lived. So even when the wall was actually down and Germany became one country again, all that happened, life for kids didn't change much. What I did find, though, when I started work, soon after school, I did actually, before I started studying, did like a placement for a few months with the company, and that was the sort of first encounter in quotes with an East German person working there. Because obviously Berlin, being then one again, it was probably the first place that actually started sort of growing together, whereas the rest of Germany took a lot longer and probably is still not quite one. But let's not go into politics. That in school it never happened because, as I say, we had, where you lived, you stayed there, and East German kids would still go to East Germany. But when I was, as I say, starting to work and then started to study as well, there was more of a mix because obviously, for work and university and places like that, you would obviously travel a bit further, and that's when I started to see that. But yeah, I mean, for the East Germans, it would have been a huge culture shock, being able to spend money and buy things that they weren't able to buy. And things like, going to a shop and it is actually full, the shelves are full rather than having to, wait for some delivery and things like that. So, yeah, but absolutely amazing time to have been there and have actually lived through it and seen the wall come down.
Did you get a piece of the wall?
I did, but I didn't actually go to get one at the time. I was sort of, a bit too busy, too many people, and a bit too chaotic. So I was a bit too young to dare do that. But obviously, I have a chunk of the wall, even though that's always with mixed emotions, because obviously it symbolizes the East German regime and all that. So, we want the wall gone. We don't want to keep a piece of it, but obviously for momentous sake, and obviously to show, our daughter as well, of, where daddy comes from and what the history all means. I still have a piece. But yeah, I mean, it was crazy days.
Did you study in Germany as well then? Did you go to like university or college, or did you go into kind of employment?
No, I did study. So I went. I've got I'm working in IT at the moment. So I've got a bachelor's degree. But I started studying in Berlin at the Polytech there. But I was never a person who liked traveling. I always hated going on school trips, hated being away. But it was quite funny. I was doing the equivalent of A-levels English at the time. And we did it was about a week going over to London with a group. And we all stayed with a guest family. And we arrived quite late, so it was almost midnight by the time we got dropped off. So it was literally just, upstairs to bed. That was it. And I woke up next day in this sort of tiny room with single glazing, flowery wallpaper, all the sort of quaint English things you can think of, with a quilt on the bed, and all the things in a sort of terraced house. And I woke up and I thought this felt more like home than home did at the time, which was a really bizarre feeling. And as I say, I was about 18 then, 17, 18. So when I then started studying, I always thought I need to come over to the UK somehow, and I was lucky that the Polytech in Berlin was actually doing an exchange program with the University of Hertfordshire. So I was able to do technically the last year, wasn't quite a whole year, in Hatfield and finish my degree there. So I was, finishing my German BSc equivalent and the bachelor over here as well. So I got the double degree, which I'm quite proud of. But yes, when I finished the studies. I still had a place to go back to in Germany to work there. And as you can imagine, they were asking, so are you coming back or not? And had a chat with my parents to see whether they'd be happy to support me if I didn't find a job, and they were happy to do that. So, yeah, I spoke to a few people, and I got a job in Eastbourne where I live now, which is, going back, 20-ish years now, over 20 years. Got a job there and sort of didn't look back since, and stayed in the UK. So I've been here, as I say, probably most of my life now, coming up to, I'm 46 now, probably lived here 23-ish years or so. Okay. So, certainly most of my adult life. So it was one of those moments where, I just have had this epiphany, and it came true.
Did you go back and forward? Were you still going back to Germany on a regular basis, kind of when you could?
Yeah, I mean, when I was still studying in Hatfield, either my parents would come over, and they still do visit now, or I would go back. It doesn't happen quite so much now because, when we had our daughter, she's 13 now, so that's been a while as well. But traveling tended to be a bit more difficult. We don't tend to go back as much now. I actually haven't been for a couple of years now, but certainly my parents come over to visit, and that's very nice to see them. But I used to go backwards quite a bit and, see Berlin, and see where I grew up. But as you can imagine, after 15, 20 years, things change so much that whenever I do go back or have been back, it looks all different, feels all different. My parents actually moved out of the flat I grew up in.
Oh, right,
so,
okay.
All the friends have moved away as well now. There was one guy who I actually grew up with. We were best friends and still are. Mm-hmm. He basically lived in the flat above us, and we always would, go to school together and play together and do everything together. And he's now, for a few years now, been moved to Italy. So there's technically nothing there to hold me. My parents are there. Yeah. But that's pretty much it, really. So it's now more, if I do go back, it's almost more like a tourist.
I was going to say that you're like an Englishman in Berlin or something like that.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. Think of Ben Maddox and all that. I'm living there. I'm thinking, oh, where have you been? And but it's like showing my wife. When we went over the first time, this is where I played and this is where I did this and all that. So I was showing that, and we went then over with my daughter as well to show where I grew up roughly in the area and things like that. So it's more about that than actually going back, because that's my home, because my home is here in Eastbourne now. That's my family. Even though if you probably ask me what's my home, I probably would still say Berlin is my home in a way, but realistically it is, it feels more like being a tourist over there, because things have changed so much since then.
It's like it depends where you have your main life experiences. I suppose if the first place you kind of fall in love is in a different country, and you kind of put down roots and have your children and stuff like that in a different country from where you're born, I think you still get kind of pang. My partner, they're from Northern Ireland, so they're kind of in the same, not as obviously as far away, but they're kind of in the same boat, that a lot of the main kind of life things that happen to them have happened over here, as opposed to them kind of being back home. So we kind of get the occasional pang of, I want to go back to visit family and stuff, and we do that. And then once we've been there for like 4 or 5 days and we get back again, they're like, thank goodness, I'm glad to be back home, home again. Do you find yourself kind of comparing and contrasting how you were brought up compared to how your daughter was brought up, in things like education systems and stuff like that, or as
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, education in the UK makes no sense to me. The different years and all that. Mm-hmm. People always say, "So what year is your daughter?" And I go, "I've no idea. I could tell you what year it would probably be in Germany, but the school system is different. I mean, like I used to go to 2 schools. I was, 6 years in one school, about 6 years in the other, and then study. Whereas here it's like 3 schools, and then there's college, and it doesn't really make much sense to me. So I'm glad my wife knows how it all works, and obviously by now our daughter knows as well. But it was always like, oh, so you go to preschool, and then what? After 3 years, do you move to another school? Why? Okay, I don't know. So yeah, it's quite different. But to be honest, I mean, the teaching and all that is similar, I'd say. My daughter always says about, the time she spends in school and that they have like a packed lunch or eats lunch at school, which I never did.
Yeah.
She says, why didn't you? I said, well, we would probably start at sort of 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe a bit earlier, and then finish by about 1 o'clock. So we'd go home and have lunch at home. So to me, like the idea of a packed lunch is alien.
Yeah.
The idea of school uniform is alien to me as well.
Oh, right. Okay.
Again, that's another, we never had uniforms or anything. And I know there's a whole discussion about, but then, kids could show off with their super trainers and things. And I'm thinking, well, kids these days shows off with their smartphone or whatever. So I don't think it's that different.
We had a period, I think we had a period of time when, but I think they tried the kind of like any kids can wear whatever they want. And you're right, you kind of end up getting, strangely enough, you kind of get kids setting up their own kind of uniform. Whereas you would have this particular jumper or this particular jacket or these particular trainers, and it was all part of a kind of a pack mentality. And I know that even my son's school recently have kind of reissued that everybody's got to be wearing kind of strict uniform now. They've kind of put their foot down and said, we've noticed there's not a slide in standards as such, but they're just wanting everybody to basically go to school so that I don't know if it's like discrimination, monetary discrimination, I guess, so that you've not got, you're making kind of everybody kind of almost wear the kind of the same stuff, which is fine, which is kind of fair enough.
Yeah, I get that, but as I say, when I grew up, I could never tell which kid had more money or not. I suppose you could, but there's one or two kids who might want to stand out. As I say, they could do that now as well. As I say, they just have the bigger watch, or I don't know what it is these days, and there'll still be difference despite the school uniform. So I don't know. Again, as I say, I've not gone through the British school system, but I just don't see the difference. At a certain age as well, I found, like you just said, the kids would try and all want to be normal or average.
Yes.
Nobody wanted to really stand out. So you would wear what everyone would wear anyway. So, it doesn't, I don't think it really matters, but again, it's not for me to decide. And if it works here, it works. And, who am I to say?
Did you bring up your daughter to speak German as well? I mean, can she speak German at all, or did you give her the choice as to whether she would decide to learn it or not?
There's always the tough question, because I feel quite bad. I didn't make enough effort to teach her German because, I would speak English in my job all day. I would speak English with my wife. I would speak English with my friends. So if I was, coming home after work, I'd have to switch, physically into German mode, if you like, and then speak German with her to make an effort. And I just never did enough of that. So even though she learns German now in school and has done for a while, and I think she's really good.
Yes.
And her pronunciation is good.
Yes.
There's a sort of certain sounds that I wanted to make sure that she would be able to pronounce that I know that are quite tough, and the just to demonstrate. And she's very good at that. But I feel quite bad for not having made the effort. But then I having spoken to other parents, and I know another couple where the partner who is at home has a foreign language, obviously that child will have been brought up with that foreign language. Whereas if the partner who has a foreign language isn't at home most of the time, you find that they learn English. So it's just one of those things. I regret not making more effort, but it is what it is. And I'm pleased that she is, learning German now and catching up and doing really well. I'm quite proud of her.
With you kind of not grown up, but I guess kind of growing up in your adult life in the UK, when did you kind of get back into the kind of the board game scene again?
It was probably about 16, 17 years, something like that ago. And it was a matter of, obviously, when you go to a foreign country, while you're studying, you obviously have your, mates there and you meet people there. But when you like I think a lot of adults find anywhere, when you start work life, if you haven't got many friends, you don't necessarily find friends at work. So at that point, it's always hard finding friends. But I was quite lucky. I think at that time I'd realized it's worth me being a bit more outgoing, because I used to be very, very shy. And it was only when I came over here that I suddenly thought, well, hang on, what is the problem? I was watching English people going out. I used to live in a shared house, so I was, studying and things. And, I would watch people my age feeling awkward around each other. I'm thinking, but you guys at least speak English, so there shouldn't be any barrier. So suddenly I thought, well, just talk to people. So I became a lot more outgoing at that point. And just tried to make friends at work. And one of the people who was actually my colleague in the first job that I got here in Eastbourne, we became friends, and we started going, just to the pub now and again. And then he introduced me to another friend, who, again, we just sort of started having a drink at the pub and things, but he then brought with him games. And I think probably the first one we played was Citadels.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was easy to play in the pub, card game, doesn't need much room. And I thought, oh yeah, I really enjoyed that. And we started playing more of those games in the pub. But at some point, you get to a point where it's just too loud, too noisy. You get a bit older, you get a bit grumpy. Yeah. You don't want to be in a noisy pub. So we then started going around his place, and, he would then show us things like Small World, or actually Lords of Waterdeep, I think, was one sort of the next step up, if you like. Played that to death, probably. Has played Small World and things like that. So I have to thank him really, to, introduce me back into the board game hobby, and reignite that spark. And him and both friends, actually, I should probably shout out, it's David, who I met first, and then he introduced me to Tom. They're both still we have like a weekly games night on a Tuesday. We've now got my neighbour as well into it as well, so we've got various places to go around each other's houses, and we play games together, and it's all stemmed from there. So I'd say about 15 to 20 years-ish ago, that's when it all started again. And, I haven't really looked back since. Tom was the one who then bought more games and introduced us to more games. And, then I started buying games, and then David started buying games. And over time, obviously, we tried more and more things. So that was it. I mean,
the next obvious question I'm going to ask is, did you journey back, and have you ever been to Essen then? Or this is when you say you haven't?
No, I haven't.
Wow.
No. Unfortunately not. And I'm not going this year either, but I'm planning on going next year. I know, it's bad. I know. The only place I have been to, or the only exhibition I've been to, is the UK Games Expo last year, and again this year. That's the one that,
I know, but it's not like you couldn't figure out a place to stay. It's not like you don't kind of maybe have an idea of where you're kind of going.
And things, though.
It's not like you couldn't phone up and say, "Oh man, how you doing?" It's like, "Well, I'm coming over to Essen, when about? So end of October-ish," kind of thing. Could you think you could put me up for a couple of nights?
Yeah, well, no, you'd think that, but actually we don't have that many contacts, unfortunately. It's not quite as easy. I mean, I was thinking about like volunteering on a stand somewhere and doing it that way.
I'm just hearing excuses now.
It's just a bit...
Just excuses.
I know. But next year, I'm definitely planning on next year going for the full 3 days.
Oh, cool.
Is it 3 days? Yeah. And then, as I say, hopefully be able to help out on a stand somewhere in some shape or form, and then have some time to go around and say hello. But it's a big exhibition to see, so it'll be lots of work. But definitely UK Games Expo as well next year. So that's my favourite exhibition. I love that, and I'm really looking forward to that as well. So that Essen is a bit scary at the moment, I think, as well.
It's You're going there. I think it's kind of one of these rite of passages, isn't it? I think I know that people say Essen is completely different. It's a very, very much a this is you're here to sell your game kind of place. It's very much a huge kind of trade hall, and there's a lot of people kind of pitching and releasing and demoing and stuff like that. So no, I've not been. I'd love to go. I'd love if somebody said, come over and help with our stand, and we will I'd demo quite happily kind of all day, because it means talking to people and pretending I'm clever, which are two of my favourite things.
They do offer that, though, don't they? I think there's quite a few that offer that. I mean, certainly, if you listen to the Board Game Insider podcast, Portal Games and the indie board games, and I think they keep advertising that they need people still. I think it was the other week that they were saying that. So that's the sort of thing I want to look at. And then I don't know so much about the day. Definitely want to go around and see certain publishers, I'm sure, but I'm also looking forward to things like the evening events and meeting up with, I think Paul Grogan does stuff there in the evening on the Friday or the Thursday night, something like that.
Yeah.
And things like that. That'd be quite nice. And that's what I want to do more. And the same with the UK Games Expo. I've only been for a day so far, which is way too much, way too little. So next year I want to again go for the full time and stay overnight and take part in those sort of social events as well, and maybe meet some people face to face, even though I don't really do face to face.
That's a weird thing. It's good fun, but it's also kind of quite weird. But it's all, as I say, UK Games Expo is something I'm definitely going to need to do. But yeah, I am surprised, but I see what you say about, I think people they say, oh, I'm going to go and do this expo. And then there are always people that kind of drop out because I reckon they sit down and think, actually, I'm going to be doing this for 2 or 3 full days and it's away from work and it's still, it's a lot of hard work to actually just, I guess, stand there. I've done a few expos in my job and it's exhausting because it's not a case that you can sit down and disappear for half an hour and just have some time just, wow. You've always got to be continually engaging because you're on a kind of a sales tip. So I can imagine that being even more difficult maybe if you're kind of trying to pitch people that they're going to have fun if they sit down. Or
I used to do expos as well, and in a previous role, the company actually used to own an exhibition at Earl's Court. Well, it's moved since to various places. I think it's moved back to Olympia these days. But it was like a 4-day event. So you turn up the night before, set up the stand and things like that. And you then be there, obviously, bright and early in the morning and be on the stand, talk to people. I mean, that was like a business-to-business event in the lighting and sound industry. So entertainment, which is, a very interesting industry to work in. And you'd be tired. And then obviously in the evenings, there'd usually be events as well because the company was actually running the exhibition. They would obviously put things on. So you'd always be basically 24/7 working, literally. So even if you were out partying, having fun, you have to be careful that you don't drink too much and say something silly to someone. So it is a lot of hard work. So I think going to Essen or even UK Games Expo for the whole period and being there, demoing games or whatever they might need help with is going to be hard work. But at least I'm hoping then in the evenings I can be, I might still be, representing the blog, but it's more about the sort of, being the person, being me and speaking to people and maybe playing some games or just having a laugh. It doesn't have to be games all the time. But so I'm hoping that might be less stressful and a bit more fun. So, what kind of games, if you were walking past the stand, what kind of game's going to stop and make you turn your head? Have you got a particular kind of genre that you would dip into again and again? Is there a particular kind of bit of enjoyment that you would always look for in a game? Not really. I wouldn't say that I'm a sort of games collector or anything like that. If anything, I'm trying to get rid of games because there's only so much room. And I think Antoinette and I joke about my cupboard where I keep my games. So there's sort of like a physical space of how much games I can have. There might be a bit of room under the sofa if necessary. To me, I think for a long time now, it's been more about finding something new, some new mechanism, some new ideas, some new concepts. So it's not necessarily a type of game, but it's more about a new way of approaching something that hasn't been done before. That I'm more interested in. So, I don't know, for example, when I found out about Mint-Tin games, I thought, well, wow, you can have a game in a tiny box. And, I know people keep saying now, and Antoinette as well, that, I'm into the small games and I keep banging about Mint-Tin games. But, that was, to me, was something a new way of playing a game. I thought, well, you don't have to have a deck of cards. You can have this tiny tin. You can have some dice in there and whatever. And that was something new. And I always know, like, when looking on Kickstarter, I think, well, there's so many games that do the same that has been done before, but let's look for something new. And like when, I don't know, dice placement came out, suddenly you're not just rolling dice, but you're actually placing them somewhere so they have some sort of additional functionality.
Yeah.
So you can mitigate the risk of the randomness of the dice and things like that. So it's always trying to find something new. And to be honest, I haven't really seen anything new for a while, but at the same time, I have splurged out on Kickstarter quite a bit at the moment. There's a few things coming in. And I think recently I've sort of become a bit nostalgic. So I've backed the On the Underground London Berlin game, because it has the Berlin map in. Yeah. And also Die Macher, which obviously is the game about the German parliament and all that. Yeah. So there's two games that hark back to that. And then, I'm now looking at Tapestry by Stomai Games. I've pre-ordered that, so there's quite a lot of money being splurged out in a relatively short amount of time. But again, these, as I say, two of them are definitely for nostalgia's sake, and then I think Tapestry just looks again interesting. I'm sure it doesn't really do a lot of new stuff, but it's to me it just feels like all these elements are put together in a new way, and you're sort of going out there, exploring a world and, building the map and things like that. So just a combination of it that seemed interesting. So yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking what my game collection is, probably a lot of them are sort of worker placement, action selection type games, but then we play card games. And then also I have the difference between playing with my games group. So there's 4 of us now playing usually heavier games, even though we tend to do like a Star Realms at the end of the day, just to, or at the end of the evening, just to, finish off.
Yeah, cleanse the palate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I play with my wife and also have been thinking about games that our daughter would play. So I was talking about Lords of Waterdeep earlier. We brought that out a few years back, and I think she was playing it when she was about 9, 10-ish and really got it and really enjoyed it. And that was exciting. Since then, I've been trying to find games that she would enjoy as well. But now, going into her teenage years, it's not quite so much, even though we've been having a few sessions over the summer holidays of near and far again. So that was really enjoyable to play that. But yeah, as I say, so depending on how I play with, I'm thinking of different games. So my wife and I love Wingspan, and we've been playing that to death, literally. I think I haven't logged it, but probably dozens of times now.
I've not played it. I've not played it, and
okay.
I've not touched it. I'm terrible because I'm well behind in Tapestry. I seem to have not let kind of hype hit me.
Yeah.
And I'm also kind of being pickier because I'm actually trying to be controlled and say, kind of the games that I have to be kind of played. So I'm trying to go back and go through a lot of games that I own and actually make sure I'm kind of getting them to the table before I try and get kind of something else. Try and get the enjoyment out of the stuff that's on the shelf, as opposed to just kind of collecting them together. And I've got access to Wingspan because Steve, he's got Wingspan. And he always threatens that we should be playing it, so I've definitely got access, and I'm definitely kind of looking forward to it. I'm going to see what happens with Tapestry, because it's not like Viticulture, to me, is one of the best games that Jamie put together. I actually rank...
I've never played Viticulture, so I can't comment. So it's probably something I should get, because again, everyone seems to say it's the best game.
Yeah,
and I think it would probably fit our games group as well. So maybe I should get a copy.
I think it's. I mean, controversial. I think it's better than Scythe.
We love Scythe, by the way.
That's fine, and I completely understand that. But I also, Scythe was funny when I played Scythe, and I've played it quite a few times. And what I found with the Viticulture was a case of, on your track, you've got to get to, I think it was 30 victory points. You know where everybody's going, and you're growing your grapes, you're making your wine, you're bottling everything in the cellar, and then you're producing it. And what I found with Scythe was like kind of, you know, you put your mechs down on the table, you get ready to battle, and then you realise you're managing resources for 75% of the game. And then the other thing was that it kind of finished very, very abruptly for me. So it was almost a case of, you know, it was a case of, oh, look, I've just reached this happiness marker. Oh, and I've got my final star, and that's game over. Everything's finished. And it was kind of like, you what? We're meant to be making people happy. I didn't realise we were meant to be making people happy. I was using my mech to take some oil from you. Why are we making people? And obviously I was the person that didn't pay attention to that part of the rule and realised that grinding people into the dirt and making them go about harvesting stuff wasn't the best thing to do, and I should have been working on everybody's kind of general satisfaction with me instead, which I guess is a life lesson kind of well learned. So yeah, it's kind of strange because while I like Scythe a bit, I kind of, if I saw it on a menu with viticulture, and even if it was cheaper in the restaurant, I'd probably ask for a slice of viticulture because it's kind of a purer experience, you know, in terms of enjoyment. And I think you would enjoy it if you like the kind of the work, if you like the kind of the resource management, almost kind of like worker placement type thing of viticulture, of Scythe. I think you would enjoy it. And it's also, it does what it says on the tin. And that's not me saying Scythe is rubbish. I'm not saying Scythe is rubbish. I am. It's terrible. I'm not saying Scythe is a bad game. It's very confusing. I'm not saying that at all. You know, get viticulture is better. I'm in no way, that's nothing that's passing my lips. You know, listen to the silent bits. All I'm saying is that I think your group would kind of potentially kind of enjoy it, which
I think they would, definitely. You know, it's something that, as I say, we probably should get. It certainly would fit that group. I think they'd enjoy that. But I guess it's, you know, for a while, as you've been saying, everyone's been out for just getting the latest game. I think I've been just a victim of that as well. You just go for it. And again, like you have been settling down there, and having that limited cupboard space has helped as well. Even though I have to find a bigger cupboard, I think, for the few games I've ordered on Kickstarter now. Or a bigger sofa, maybe.
I've just got my cupboard. I've just got my cupboard, and that's it. I was in the situation where I think in my older house I was, I had stuff under my son's bed, and then I also had stuff in his cupboard, and that was where I kept my games. But I found that the space under the bed was getting an awful lot less, and the space in the cupboard was just kind of expanding and expanding. And I decided in this house, it's like, if I'm running out of space in the cupboard, unfortunately I'm going to have to say goodbye to some kind of games. You know, basically that was where the way it was going to be.
As I say, it's also about the enjoyment. I think I've done that quite consciously as well now. I've tried not to just keep playing the latest and the greatest. And even with our games group, I've said, you know, when we were playing Scythe, and I know you don't like the game. Oh, no, sorry, you love the game.
I like the game.
You don't care.
It's frustrating. It's very, you know.
But when we played that, you know, you play a game like that, or Rising Sun, something that you maybe play once and it's amazing, and you didn't play it for a few weeks, and then you never really get into it. And I think games like that, you do need to play several times. So I've said to even the games group, look, if we play a game like that, you know, something that's a bit heavier, let's play it every week for a few weeks until we get really bored with it, then move on to the next game. So we actually get the enjoyment out of it. And as I said, we start doing that, you know, back onto Near and Far. Just, I know that's lighter, it's not a heavier game, but that's about the story there, doing a campaign there. And so we did it for Scythe for a while, and we did it with Rising Sun, just actually play it a few more times so you can try different factions, you can drive different strategies, and you actually enjoy the game rather than go, oh, look at the minis and it's amazing, and look at the artwork, and you play it once and then you put it away and you never see it again.
I think that's really important. And I think sometimes if there's one thing I would like to see kind of in I guess review pieces is somebody actually going back and revisiting the review kind of maybe after they've played the game an awful lot more times. Because I reckon sometimes what happens is, and I see this all the time across kind of like the game groups, is that there'll be always one or two tables where there's 4 expectant little faces sitting around the table while somebody's flicking through the rules and giving kind of instructions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think what's good about the game group that I'm in is sometimes they'll stubbornly refuse to play a new game. You know, I'll say, oh, look at this. And they'll go, no, bugger off. We're not playing that. You're playing this. You know, so the other day we played The Captain is Dead, which is...
Oh, yeah. I mentioned you saying that.
Oh, yes. I'm going to write... I've kind of like... It takes a little bit for a game to kind of inspire me to go ahead and just stick something down on paper, you know, in terms of my thoughts. And I've been very, very lucky of late with quite a few games that I've managed to get to the table that have, you know, I was pleasantly surprised by Dinogenics recently that I've played it a fair number of times, and Wildlands.
Okay, yeah.
Wildlands was another game that I kind of... I had a wonderful experience with Wildlands. You know, to the point where I threatened to steal Matt Thrower's expansions or try to blackmail him into giving me some, which was fantastic. And I'm going to, you know, I've got them expansions now, so I'm going to, you know, I'm in the process of playing through them and see how they kind of work. So, you know, it's kind of...
Oh, cool, yeah.
You know, it's kind of that kind of thing. And, I mean, we're here, obviously, we're talking about the most obvious name for a blog ever. But what, I mean, for you to start kind of writing stuff, was it the passion side of things? Was it the enjoyment that made you think, actually, I'm going to sit down here and I'm going to kind of write about stuff. I'm going to write about stuff which is important to me. Or were you another person that says, I've got to, you know, I want to write a blog? What was the reason that you decided, well, the Tabletop Games blog kind of came about?
Well, it's actually... It's obviously developed over time, but when I first started, I had a completely different idea. I knew I wanted to do something within the tabletop board game industry, because, you know, you get to a point in your job where you think, okay, it's just a job. I want to do something else and we'll do it more seriously. And I had an idea for a project, which I don't really want to talk about because it never went any there. But I thought, well, you know, while I'm working on that, I just want to actually, you know, do something more active in the industry and be part of the community and find out more about it in more detail rather than just being a sort of a bystander. So, well, let's start a blog, because I always enjoyed writing. I used to write sort of fiction, you know, on and off bits and pieces here and there, and, you know, I enjoyed writing. So I thought, this is something I can do. I can write about the industry in some shape or form. And I think the very first thing I posted was literally about, you know, our games night, and that was it. I think I posted on LinkedIn at some point, and then it appeared on the blog. But that's where it all started. And then obviously over time it developed into something else. And I always wanted to just talk about topics that I was interested in that were tabletop games related.
Yeah.
And the name, I mean, literally, I wasn't putting much time into it. I just thought, well, it's a Tabletop Games blog. And I literally just went online to see whether the domain name existed, and no one had registered it. And so I bought it, and there we are.
I just find that absolutely hilarious to me. That just, because I was going to think,
I couldn't believe my luck.
I thought, like, kind of, did you go and get it in 1995 when the kind of the internet started to come about? And it's like, nah, got it about 2 years ago. And it was just available. And all these people that must be raging to know that if they had just gone in and said they were going to get a Tabletop Games blog, they could have had that domain name. Instead, they were sitting around going, oh, do we call ourselves Meeply Beepleys? I can't, I'm in danger, because this is the thing. If I am in danger and I say, oh, shall we call ourselves, exactly, Meeple Doorknob, somebody will,
shall we call ourselves the Dice Tower? Hang on.
Exactly. Oh, Meeple Syrup. No, that's a name. Okay, Meeple's Overboard. Oh no, that's a name again. You know, that kind of thing. Sporadically Bored. That's not even a board game, anything.
Oh, this new Tetris shape. Was it polynomials? Something polynomial.
I know. Some kind of dice shape. I don't know, polyhedron. We could have this polyhedron, you know, that kind of thing. So you're in danger, but you just went in and just went, it's a blog.
Well, I made an effort to call it Tabletop Games, because I mean, again, as you know, English is my second language, but I thought board games I'm playing more than board games, playing card games. But I'm sort of regretting it because tabletop for a lot of people means like, the figures, moving them around, like the Warhammer and the Games Workshop stuff. So I do get contact also by role-playing people.
Yes.
And I'll say, well, I haven't done role-playing games for ages now, probably since my teenage years. So I don't think I can help you review any of those things, but thank you very much. So the game tabletop can be negative, but I've made a conscious effort to try and be more inclusive in that term because I didn't want to just talk about board games. I want to talk about card games and anything in the community. As I say, reviews weren't even in my mind at that point. I thought, I can't review games. I'm not a reviewer. I don't know how to do that. I just write about, topics that I'm interested in. And that's really where it started. I thought, well, okay, people are talking about this. That sounds exciting. Let's find out more bit, about that and then talk about what my thoughts are and hopefully encourage other people to, think about the same things. And that's really what the blog was for a very long time. Just talking about ideas, concepts, things that I was interested in that were to do with the hobby in some shape or form. And then I was contacted, I should get this right now. I think it was Digidized about, a couple of apps that they were releasing. And would I be happy to get like a free code to review, the game? And I said, okay, why me? But fine. I'll happily have a free app code that I can look at. And I started reviewing Le Havre, I can't remember the game now, but that's where the reviews started. Literally, someone approaching me, and I thought, well, I didn't expect that to happen. Then I thought, well, okay, this is actually quite interesting. I just was always worried what I could review because I'm not a person who gets sent copies of games all the time like some other lucky people. Or are they lucky? I don't know. But, most of the games I review are games that I've actually bought myself that I, backed on Kickstarter, got from a shop or however I got them, or now sometimes games that obviously friends might have bought and that we've played, but they're always games that I've played and I know pretty well. So I try to avoid, playing it once and then reviewing it. I'd rather than not do the review. I want to make sure I understand the game and can actually talk about it.
Yeah.
And then even the reviews to start with, if you go back through my blog, you'll find the literal thing. Okay, here's the stats of the game, player count and game length and Board Game Geek rating and all that sort of things. And, here's the rules, basically. I'm going to regurgitate the rules for you and then say it's a really good game. That's obviously, again, that's developed now. And I've thought I'm trying to make my reviews now more about my experience. I'm basically expecting people, if they read the review, to know what the game is about, basically understand more or less what it's about and just get an idea of, okay, what did I actually feel when I played the game? What was my experience with it? What did I enjoy about it? What how did it make me feel? That's what I'm trying to do now. Yeah. Rather than the usual of, okay, you put the cards here and then you draw 3 cards and you play that, and which, is, as I always say, is useful because you do need to know how a game works if you want to buy it. But I think after that, you do want to know, if there's someone out there that has a similar taste in games, what do they think about the game? How do they feel about the game? And, that's probably also going back to me watching people like Rado, who was probably the first person who I watched regularly. And I felt, okay, actually, at the time I was thinking about getting games to play with my wife. And I thought, well, he and Jen play games. So, and as I started watching his channel, I realized that his taste in games seemed to overlap quite a lot with what I liked. So I started buying games that he was recommending. And now I'm thinking, well, okay, if people have a similar taste to me, then they probably want to know more about, how I like the game rather than, how does it actually play. So I'm not doing playthroughs or anything like that. And that's how that came about. But still, the topic discussions, as I call them, are still something that's important to me. So that's probably where the core of the blog is, because, as I say, trying to get hold of copies of games is expensive. And even though I am, have been approached and have been sent a couple of, review copies of some games in the past, which I really appreciate, it's not a general thing. So if I want to do this regularly, I'm going to be a poor man very soon. Yeah. So I have to find another way of doing it. And that's, as I say, my focus has always been on doing those discussions and talking about things that I'm interested in, that I think that the industry or the community seems to be interested in as well. And I feel that I've actually now and again seemed to have hit a nerve somewhere in a positive way, that people seem to have responded and said, oh yeah, that's really interesting. And I don't know whether they're just saying that, but I'm hoping that they actually mean it. And, you know, that was really encouraging. But even if that wasn't the case, I would probably still just keep writing, because I enjoy writing about these things, because I enjoy playing games and I enjoy seeing what's happening in the community. All these various topics are, you know, being discussed, and see whether I can add a little thought and maybe make people think about things. So that's where the blog is.
And reviewing games is hard.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't, and it's very, very difficult to review a game, because you have to play it several times, and at the same time, in some ways, you have to hold back, and which is sometimes I'll write. I think I'm quite happy to write about any kind of game that would come across, but for me it's the time. I would, you know, I'm not being funny here, but if I had an extra 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day, I would quite happily produce people a review every 2 or 3 days if I had the additional time, because I find writing very easy. I hate to say it. I've been writing for goodness knows how many years now, and I've written for video game. I've written for video game kind of websites. I've written opinion pieces and stuff like that. I can quite simply churn out a review in some things, as long as it's kind of like the format of it, kind of like a general idea, and it's not always my Wildlands review, for instance, is while I'm saying to you, I absolutely loved that game, the entire review is based around the regret of other people not enjoying the game as much as me. That's the whole basis of the entire review. Says I sat this down kind of excitedly with 4 people, and they absolutely didn't like it. It just so bounced off of them so hard that I was very, very upset, that I thought my opinion was my opinion, and maybe my experience was kind of wrong. And it's just like, no, it's just like how you sampled the kind of game. So, but getting that, if something strikes me and it strikes me as a strong opinion one way or another, and I have been toying with, there is a game that I've played quite recently, which I didn't like at all.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm toying with the idea of just, I don't want to go in for the kill, but at the same time, I think it's important to say to people when you didn't have a good experience of a game, because as you quite rightly said, you watch Rado because Rado has a certain thing that he likes. When I watch Rado videos, there's certain games you can tell he's absolutely gelling with, and he's loving kind of playing the games and getting on it. And there's lots of games he just absolutely adores, and other games you can tell that he's playing through and he's not 100% sure. And sometimes those are the ones that need the extra corrections and stuff, because for him it hasn't flowed with him, which then says a hell of a lot to me about whether I should consider picking up the game. Do you know what I mean? If he's saying,
he obviously has. He has a background in obviously video games and game design, and obviously he does know what he's talking about. Even though when you listen to his recent podcast episode, you know, he might come across as arrogant, saying that, you know, I can play a game for like 50 minutes and I know whether it works or not, and I know what to fix. But I think he's got a good point. You know, he does know what needs to fix and how to fix it. He's not just complaining. That's what I like about it. He's not just ripping a game apart and saying this doesn't work. He goes, well, you know, I hate it because it could have been fixed so easily, and if the publisher fixes it, then I'll definitely buy the game. It's that sort of approach which I like. And you were saying about, obviously, you know, doing a negative review, if you like. And I think that is very hard and very difficult. It's quite easy as opposed to just rip a game apart. You know, we know how easy it is to criticize something. But do it well, and you know, I'm trying. I'm not saying I'm shying away from it. You know, if I don't like something, I do say it. But at the same time, I think I've been lucky that I'm reviewing games that I buy, so chances are that I will like the game. But at the same time, if I was ever given a game that I really don't get on with, I would probably go back to the person or the publisher, whoever it is, and say, look, I'd rather not review it. But I get what you're saying about we should also have negative, feedback. It's just, I don't know how I would phrase it in a constructive way, because if there's literally nothing about the game that I enjoy, then all I could say is, here's how the game works, I don't like it, and here are the reasons why I don't like it. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's probably, actually, if you do it well, is really hard to do, a negative review. Yeah, writing positive reviews is, in that sense, a lot easier.
I did it for Parks, I think. I wasn't overly negative for Parks. But I guess because of me not being from the US, not appreciating the various different parks that were there, also, just certain aspects of the game was kind of like, depending on who you play it and who you teach the rules with, you can either have a really, really good experience or a really, really bad experience. And I kind of laid that out to the point that I was almost kind of like, when I kind of said it to, when I sent it, I think it was Keymaster, I says, that's the review live. And they went, oh, thanks very much. And I was just waiting. And then I kind of got paranoid because, and I'll explain why, because they were in the process of, they had an embargo, which is a topic you can get into, which, but they had an embargo to say, please, if you don't mind, can we release the content after this date? Because that's when the game is likely to be with backers, and also at the same time it's going to be going to retail. And I was like, fine, and I'm fairly, I will get round to reviewing the game, but, I have to kind of be in the writing type mood, because when I do, as I say, when I write the stuff, it's just like, done kind of thing. Yeah. And they were putting up reviews left, right and centre, linking on their page and stuff like that, and they hadn't put mine up. And I was just like that. I didn't say your game was shit though. I actually said I really kind of find it fun, but I was kind of looking at it from a point of view of somebody. And then and then I was like, oh, I just can't find it. And then it turned out it's actually linked in their website. On the main thing is, here's somebody that's written. I was like, oh, okay, so it's maybe not that bad. So I think I have reviewed a few games which I just went, this isn't a good game, and they're actually, there is a game on the blog just now. I might tempt, I don't know. I kind of like, the joke would always be, write a Terraforming Mars review.
Yeah, but you love the game.
But I'd need to play it. I'd need to play it, Stephen, again. You hear me, Stephen? Yeah. Need to play it, Mr. Bonacore. Yeah?
Come on the podcast as well.
He's been on the podcast already.
I know, but come again.
He could come in again. He'd be more than welcome. We do like him.
Yeah.
But, and we'd review your Marsy game. But, But, I mean, are you doing this? Because this is when it gets, nobody that's doing this is doing it for money, unless you're kind of like, shut up and sit down. Yeah. Are you just going to, are you quite happy to have this as kind of like a paid hobby where the costs and stuff are covered through kind of like Patreon and stuff like that? Or would you like to be expanding kind of more? Because you do a lot of content as well. I mean, I know that
thank you.
I know that we kind of joked at the beginning to say, let's have a race and see who does the content. But you release podcasts on a regular basis. You are regularly kind of writing up review pieces and stuff like that. So I'm guessing you're not doing this through obligation. You're doing this because you're obviously enjoying doing this.
Yes.
Is there a bigger game for this? Are you quite happy to say, well, rather than me do hill walking or collect packets of crisps, I've taken the most obvious name for a website about tabletop, and I've created a website about tabletop?
Well, I think if I was taking it seriously, I probably would have called it Tabletop Games Blog. I think that's a bit too unimaginative.
I like it.
No, I know. I mean, from a search perspective, it's amazing. But no, I mean, as I say, originally when I was doing it, I thought, well, this is going to give me an insight into the community and industry, and then I can sell this great product that I thought I was going to create, which, as I say, is not happening. I don't have the time. So really what this is now, and what this is definitely developed into, is something I enjoy doing. But obviously, as I say, payment is the issue, and time is the issue. So even though I've started a Patreon, and I thank all my Patreon backers at this stage, the money I'm getting, and I think you mentioned before, basically goes straight out to other Patreon, supporting other Patreons, including yourself. So the net benefit, I think I might end up with like $1 a month or something like that. And then people have been very, generous on Ko-fi on the odd occasion as well. And, that's great, but that's not an income. And I don't think it ever will be. I don't think that what I'm producing warrants that, that level of support where I can just go, right, I'm doing such a great job. Mm-hmm. People should pay me lots of money and I should just basically just do that and full time and be able to afford that. I don't think I'm at that point yet. And it's the usual thing where you're trying to maybe get to that point at some point, but I don't think that's really where I'm aiming for. I'm doing that out of fun, but at the same time, I'm trying to make time. So, in my day job, I'm trying to see whether there's any ways of reducing hours, finding a way of working from home or something like that to create more time to put more into this, because I enjoy doing this and I want to have more time. And for example, I used to do videos, but I don't do those really anymore because they take a huge amount of time. They take, I don't know, 5-10 minute video
you
takes
haven't seen my videos.
At least an hour. No,
you haven't seen my videos.
One take.
I'm just like one take.
They're really good. I like them.
I've taken actually to doing like, I like doing multiple angles and stuff now, but it's just me pausing it and then press and go again. And
but even then, you still spend the time then editing the video together and making sure. Okay.
No.
But those people who do, I certainly found that, as I say, you're probably spending 4 or 5 times the time the end video product is to actually editing at the very minimum. And if you do it properly, it's probably 10-20 times as much. So a 10-minute video takes an hour to actually put together. And if you do it well, probably a day. So
I saw Paul Grogan. Did you see Paul Grogan saying, what do you think of the kind of, he was doing a fade-on thing for the game. He says, what do you think of Letter Jam or something like that? He says, what do you think of that?
Letter Jam.
And I was like, that's about 100 times the effort that I would ever make.
I know.
The only reason I've got swishy stuff on my videos is because the video editor from Microsoft allows me to put swishy stuff on the videos, and that's about it. I don't know. I'd love to do more videos. I'd love to just do videos where I'm just mucking about.
Yeah.
Basically.
With your rabbit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just mucking about.
You should do more of those. I love those. The ones you did on the Twitter channel. We'll put the link in the description of this podcast. They're just amazing. I love Bailey.
He's
my new friend.
Bailey's fantastic. He was out and about today. But you think he's kind of
nice.
he's he's institutionalized, basically. It's kind of like
he doesn't know the outdoor.
He's like Brooks in the Shawshank Redemption. Basically, it's kind of like it is kind of like Morgan Freeman. Get busy living or get busy dying. He kind of like we let him out and we went, go for a runabout then, and he ran straight under the coffee table and he just sat there and he just like, I'm not moving because I'm under the table now and you can't get me. So there you go. So that's what he kind of that's what he kind of did. I'm gonna.
No, but going back to the content and all that, as I say, that's why I'm focusing on the blog and the podcast, as in the sort of audio versions of the blog are literally just me reading out what I've written. So that is again very little effort or time, should I say? There's effort obviously in there, but there's very little time going into that. And then the Tabletop Inquisition podcast that I'm doing with Antoinette. Again, making a podcast, I think, is a lot easier than video. So that's the amount of time I have at the moment to do that. But I'd love to be able to do more. I'd love to actually do nicer videos and maybe go back into that. But that's, as I say, that would require me either getting a better paid job so I can do less hours or somehow juggle things. But as I, even though I appreciate every support I'm getting from the Patreon supporters, it's more about having someone out there saying, actually, I like what you're doing. That $1 a month, as I keep saying to people, if you just back me $1, all that means to me really is there's someone who's interested in what I'm doing and appreciates what I'm doing. And that means a lot more than someone backing me at, I don't know what the top level actually is, probably like $10 a month or something like that.
And I think I've said this before, is that you're probably in the same stage in your actual career, where in order for you to kind of match the money to kind of go full time in the industry, it's going to be...
It's impossible. You have a family, you have a certain way of life, you have a certain things that you do. You do want to have a holiday now and again as well. So I have no expectation that this, will ever be full time and this is all I'm doing. But at the same time, as I say, if I could win the lottery and not have to work, then this would probably be full time, because I enjoy it so much, and if I had more time and find ways of making time, that's what I'm working on at the moment, trying to find half hour here, maybe do a bit on the bus journey to work, a bit of editing there, a bit of writing here. So just try and sneak a few minutes here and there to make that happen, and that's fine. That works.
I'd turn up at the Dice Tower con in America and go and surprise Mike Delisio, because he deserves to get surprised. You know what you did, Delisio.
I know.
You know what you did. Yeah, we will not mention that on here.
But you will.
But you know what you did, and that's what I would do. I would just turn up in a disguise and just surprise him. That's what I would do. I'm a fan of your writing. I'm a fan of your podcasts and your style. I'm definitely a fan of the kind of the snippets of the topics that you do, because you're one of these glorious people that kind of records the stuff that you've written down.
Yeah, so you don't have to read it, so you can actually listen to it. Yeah,
I can just go, how do I want to fall asleep tonight?
Listen to my dulcet tones.
Yes, I do. So you're lucky I'm staying awake just now. But no, I listen to it. When there's a new one out, it's like, yep, I'll put it on. Which is always interesting, because it's you have an opinion and you're quite happy to kind of share it, which is kind of good, which I kind of like. And I'm going to issue a royal decree. I hereby declare that everybody should be checking out your content. There you go.
Thank you.
There you go. No, I like it. It's enjoyable.
You said it, so it means a lot. Yeah, no, thank you.
If people have listened along tonight and they want to find out where you exist, where do you exist on the internet web? It's not like we haven't been telling people all the way through. Where can we find you?
If you Google Tabletop Games blog, and then if that doesn't come up, just put a .com at the end.
There you go.
That's where you find me. So, and also on Twitter, obviously links are on the blog to find me on Twitter. But Twitter's obviously a bit more tricky. So when you read out one of my questions on a previous podcast episode, it was quite funny when you said it's Tabletop Games blah. Because obviously the OG doesn't fit into the Twitter username.
It doesn't. Yeah, no, well, obviously.
And then obviously the podcast is on iTunes and all these different things, iHeart, FM, or whatever it is now that we're on as well. All these things suddenly start appearing. It's quite amazing. But again, the website, you find everything there.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure that we put all the links in the show notes so that we have got notes to show. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to.
And you should. He's doing great content, better than mine.
I'll fight you for it. You can go to the internet webs and search for We're Not Wizards, and you'll find us in all the worn out faces, worn out places, like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And you can find us on YouTube by Tabletop Podcast. We're Not Wizards Tabletop Podcast. At the end is youtube.com/c/ We're Not Wizards Tabletop Podcast. You can find us on our website, which is we'renotwizards.com. You can find us on our blog, which Steve is just ramping up the content. That's we'renotwizards.blogspot.com. Yes, Steve's very, very good at what he does, and you should be reading his stuff and ignoring mine, because mine is just a garbled mess of English. You can find us on all the podcast catchers, the ones that have got the word pod in them, the ones that have got the word cast in them, and the clever ones that don't. You know, you think you start with a joke and you think it's clever and interesting, then you realise there's a whole pile of podcast catchers that don't use the word podcast in them, you know, like iHeartRadio.
They might use FM though.
iHeartRadio.
Or radio.
Yeah, what are you doing? Stop it. Just ruined it for me. But you can also go to the Apple podcasts, who have decided to wreck everything as usual, and you can find us on there. And I was checking our charts because I've got this thing. If you want to check, if you've got a podcast, and everybody's got a podcast, you check out Chartable, because it tells you it's CHARTABLE.com. Have a check on that, because you can find out that you're currently I am currently number 23. I'm currently number 23 in the iTunes charts for Azerbaijan.
You're doing really well there. Who's listening there? Please write in if you're listening in Azerbaijan. I want to have a review from you and an email.
Just say hello. You know, go to Twitter. We're Not Wizards. Say hello. We'd love to hear from you. That'd be fantastic. If you do like what you've listened,
you don't find me on there. I'm sure on Chartable.
You will be. You will be. You'll definitely be on there. You'll probably not be as high in the Azerbaijan charts.
Probably not. No, can't beat that.
You'll probably not be, but you might be 27, which is fine.
Okay.
Or you can go to Apple Podcasts. You can leave us you can get us a subscription. You can leave us a rating or a review. If you are going to be leaving us a rating or review, don't give us 10 stars, because it makes us big-headed. But don't give us 1 star, because it makes us cry. Give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average.
Until that changes, of
then
course.
We're just a little bit, until they change it again, wreck my life and my jokes. You know, and we're just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average tonight is the rather wonderful, the rather fantastic. He's an obvious name with an obvious game. It's Oliver Kinne.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you. There's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not Laura Deming. Are we Laura Deming, Oliver?
No, Robert. You're not.
And the second thing, let's say goodbye. So it's goodbye from Oliver. Say goodbye.
Bye, Oliver.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s. Make something awful.
Definitely.
But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.